Thank you for listening to this chapter. For advance releases of upcoming chapters, you can join me on Patreon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chapters, and kindly support this channel on Ko-fi. The link is in the description below. A Lady's Tranquility. Story of Kunning Palace. Author, Shi Jing. Chapter 83, Peach Cake and Sachet. Today she came to learn zither, not to quarrel or complain, and besides, Shi Wei did not provoke her. It was just that the way he called her Ning had stirred something deeper in her heart, and she had lost control of her emotions. Crying in public was always embarrassing. Jiang Xuening quickly raised her sleeves and rubbed her face randomly, smudging her makeup so that she looked like a little painted cat. She said, "It's just sand in my eyes. It's okay." Shi Wei was suddenly speechless. Jiang Xuening perked up, looking as if nothing had happened. She put the medical book aside and asked him, "Sir, are you going to test my fingering today and play colorful clouds chasing the moon?" Shi Wei looked at her and gave a faint, then asked, "Have you mastered it?" Jiang Xuening didn't say anything, but just put the zither straight on the table. She had not been slacking off in the past few days. She didn't play the zither in the past because Shi Wei said that her mind was not at peace and he wouldn't let her play it, but she actually always knew that she couldn't get away with it when learning from Shi Wei, and she shouldn't take chances, because this man was very serious about everything. At this moment, she didn't think about anything and just stroked the strings and played the open finger song. It was another winter afternoon. Because no one had been informed in advance of Shi Wei's visit today, the charcoal basin in the side hall had just been lit and was not yet very warm. The window was half open, so it felt a bit cold and lonely. There was wind blowing in, and the chilly sunlight was carried by the wind and fell on the corner of his dark green Taoist robe. Shi Wei stood in front of the desk, some distance away, watching Jiang Xuening playing the zither. It was true that her mind was often restless, but when she calmed down, she showed real potential. The girl's eyes were still wet with tears, her face was stained with red makeup, her sparkling eyes naturally drooped, and her thick and long eyelashes lightly covered them, revealing a seriousness that she had never shown before. The 5 fingers were slender and best suited for playing strings. The tunes of gong, sheng, jiao, zheng, and yu were all accurate, and the notes were all harmonious. Although the fingering and the connection were still a bit rough and crude, the overall appearance was there, and the clumsiness of learning the zither in Fengchen Hall had also faded. The flowing zither music emanated from the vibrating strings. There was a moment of silence in the hall. When the music of the zither was about to fade away, Shi Wei moved and nodded slowly. "You have indeed not wasted these days, and have gotten into shape. It's good that you didn't come to this side hall just to sleep, which is gratifying." He was teasing her about the last time she fell asleep while he was playing the zither. Jiang Xuening opened her mouth and said, "That was an exception." But just as she finished defending herself, the feeling of hunger in her stomach naturally surged up, turning into a soft cuckoo sound. It would have been fine if there were many people and noises, but at this moment there were only her and Shi Wei in the hall. It was so quiet that even the sound of a needle falling could be heard. This originally slight sound was as obvious as thunder on a sunny day. Jiang Xuening. Shi Wei. Their eyes met. One blushed with embarrassment and wished she could dig a hole and crawl into the ground, while the other just looked at her silently, obviously not expecting it, and was even a little amused. Shi Wei raised a finger and gently pressed his thin lips, still unable to hold back his laughter, and said, "It was indeed an exception. How come last time it was because you didn't get enough sleep, and this time it's because you didn't eat enough? Those who know you might say you're well loved and trusted by the princess, but those who don't might think that you have come to the palace to be punished and imprisoned." Sometimes the person surnamed Shi could be quite mean in his words. Jiang Xuening gritted her teeth secretly and looked at him without saying a word. Shi Wei asked, "Didn't you eat?" Ning said, sullenly, "I was reading in the morning and forgot the time. I fell asleep without paying attention and forgot to eat." The palace was not home. The imperial kitchen did not wait for anyone. Shi Wei couldn't help but feel amused again. If it were up to his usual temperament, he would not bother to deal with such trivial matters. As the saying goes, a full stomach makes one sleepy. For students, it was best to feel a little hungry so that they could stay awake and concentrate on their studies. In other words, it's good to be hungry. However, Ning came to learn the zither, and she played quite well just now, which showed that she put her heart into it. Besides, a girl of her age was still growing, so he took pity on her and opened the food box on the corner of the desk. There was a small dish of peach cake slices on the top shelf. Shi Wei brought it out and placed it beside the tea table. Then he put the kettle on the stove and called Jiang Sunin, "Come and have some tea." Ever since he opened the food box, Jiang Sunin's eyes followed him and were almost fixed on the small dish of peach cake slices. Her stomach was empty, and her heart itched with longing. When she heard him asking her to have tea, the first thought that came to her mind was, "I shouldn't go." Shi Wei was the teacher and she was the student, so there had to be respect for each other. She had heard of Shi Wei's treasonous words in the past, and knew Shi Wei's unknown secrets, and Shi Wei had thought about killing her to silence her. What if the tea was poisonous? But the small plate of peach cake was there. Jiang Suning couldn't resist the secret temptation after all, so she stood up and moved over. This was absolutely not because she wanted the pastries. Shi Wei asked her to come over for tea. How could she not obey? Jiang Suning said, "Thank you, sir," and sat down in front of the tea table. She glanced at Shi Wei, silently stretched out a paw, picked up a thin piece of peach cake from the small plate, and took a bite. Ugh. The moment she put the pastry into her mouth, she suddenly paused. The hint of secret joy on her face also froze a little. Shi Wei didn't care at first. He was just taking the teaspoon to scoop tea from the teapot. He looked up and said, "What's wrong?" Jiang Suning reacted and immediately shook her head. Nothing. It was just different from what she thought. But if she stopped to think about it, it was obvious. Given Shi Wei's current status and the setting they were in, how could she expect to taste a certain flavor? It was best not to reveal any clues. Otherwise, if he noticed something and remembered those past events, who knew if he might suddenly decide to kill her again? She quickly lowered her head and chewed slowly. The soft ingredients of the peach cake slowly melted in her mouth. If she ignored the overly sweet taste, it could be considered exquisite. Eating 2 slices was enough to fill her stomach and satisfy her hunger. In front of Shi Wei, Jiang Suning didn't dare to talk nonsense. She ate 1 slice and took another. Shi Wei looked at her eyebrows and finally realized something, and asked, "Are the snacks made in the imperial kitchen not delicious?" Jiang Suning quickly shook her head. Shi Wei's gaze fell from her to the plate of peach cake slices. He seldom ate the snacks specially prepared for him in the side hall. At this moment, he just picked up a piece and took a small bite. When the snack reached the tip of his tongue, the tip of his brows raised slightly. Jiang Suning felt extremely flustered for some reason. She didn't even dare to raise her head. Shi Wei slowly put down the unfinished piece of peach cake and looked at her quietly for a long time. Only when he heard the water boiling next to him did he look away, pick up the water, pour it over the tea set, and slowly began to make tea. This time, Jiang Suning knew what it meant to not be able to swallow food. Shi Wei didn't say anything else. He just asked her about the text she had learned a few days ago while making tea, and casually tested her knowledge. After the tea had been brewed 4 times, he asked her to practice the zither again. He himself did nothing more. He sat back at his desk and stared at the red ink comments on the memorial for a long time. After more than half an hour, he said to Jiang Suning, "Although you have the attitude, your foundation is still too weak. People often say that hard work can make up for lack of talent. It's not completely right, but it can't be said to be wrong. That's all for today, and don't slack off after you go back. Starting tomorrow, I will also be testing you on classical texts, so come to the side hall at this time." Jiang Xuanning finally breathed a sigh of relief and stood up and agreed. Then she bid farewell to Shi Wei, and cautiously retreated out of the side hall and slipped away. Shi Wei sat in the side hall for a while before leaving the palace with the memorial. Shi's mansion and Yang Yiho's mansion are separated by only a wall. The difference was that the Yongyi Marquis mansion was on the front of the street, and the Shi mansion was on the back of the street. The two mansions faced east and west respectively, back to back. Therefore, when his carriage returned home, he had to pass by the Yongyi Marquis's mansion. He could easily see the heavy troops surrounding it outside, each of them looking at everyone passing by with cold eyes. As soon as he got off the carriage and entered the mansion, and walked up to the corridor, Jian Shu walked towards him quickly and whispered, "In addition to Mr. Gongyi, our people also said that they saw Mr. Ding Fei coming out of Hengyuan Casino early this morning, but that place was a mixed crowd and we didn't pay attention at the time, so we lost him." Shi Wei stood in the corridor and said nothing. Not far away, the side door suddenly echoed with voices. Someone was chatting and laughing with the gatekeeper before stepping into the residence. When Jian Shu heard it, he turned around and immediately smiled. Old Tao is back. He was the chef in the mansion, and he was known for his excellent cooking. Old Tao was broad-shouldered and fat, but his face was full of joy. He was holding a basket of vegetables in one hand and a fish in the other. When he saw Shi Wei standing in the corridor, he hurried over to salute and said, "My lord, you are back. I bought a big fresh carp today. It's alive. The cakes I made a few days ago were secretly eaten by Master Dao Qin. I also bought a few pounds of glutinous rice and a pound of peach kernels. You can try to make some peach cakes." Shi Wei looked at his full basket, lowered his eyes, and nodded. Jiang Xuanning quickly walked out of the side hall of Fengchen Hall, and walked until she was far away, and arrived at the entrance of Yanzhizai. She leaned against the door and looked back. Seeing that no one was following her, she breathed a sigh of relief. She almost got sick from eating peach cake. She was so bold that she dared to eat the things given by Shi Wei, and she even dared to think that they were made by Shi Wei himself. She simply didn't want to live anymore. Fortunately, the other party didn't notice, and she escaped safely. She patted her chest gently. When Yao Shi and Yo Yo walked out of Yanzhizai, they saw her like this. What came to their mind was the way she turned around to look for Zhang Jia that day. Hatred surged up in their hearts, and they smiled faintly. "Didn't the second Miss Jiang go to learn the zither? Why do you act like a thief when you come back? Were you scolded by Master Shi again?" Jiang Xuanning turned around and saw her. In recent days, Yao Shi's hostility towards her has gradually become apparent. But there were so many people who hated her, so what did Yao Shi even count for? She hadn't reached the point where she needed too much attention yet. Jiang Xuanning was not angry after hearing the sarcasm. After all, she played the zither well today, so she barely earned Shi Wei's praise. Not going to heaven was already a relief. She raised her eyebrows and smiled, looking relaxed, and said, "That will disappoint Miss Yao. Today I can finally touch the zither, and I just got a word of praise from Master Shi. I'll certainly keep working hard to live up to his dedicated teachings." People may not always enjoy seeing their friends succeed, but they always love seeing their enemies suffer. If the person you hate was suffering, even if you couldn't see them, you will feel secretly happy just by hearing the news from afar. Jiang Xuanning was undoubtedly Yao Shi's enemy. But not only was she doing well, she was saying so directly to her face. The relaxed smile between her eyebrows was like needles that pierced people's hearts and made them bleed. Yao Shi choked and stopped talking. Yo Yu was already scared, and at this moment she kept her mouth shut like a saw-mouthed gourd, not saying a word. Jiang Xuanning clapped her hands and walked away from them briskly. Yo Yu looked at Yao Shi's face and said softly, "Maybe she's just putting on a brave face." Everyone knows that she is famous for being unlearned and unskilled. Learning the zither also depends on talent. She is so dumb that she doesn't even know the fingering. How could Master Shi praise her? She just said it on purpose to upset you. Yao Shi took a deep breath, flicked her sleeves, and turned around. But just as she reached the entrance of Yanjizai, she glanced inadvertently and paused. A sachet fell where Jiang Suning had just stood. Yo Yu followed her gaze and naturally bent down to pick up the sachet. She turned it over and saw that on the moon-white background there were delicate peonies embroidered with dark blue silk threads. The stitches were fine and very beautiful. "Isn't this Jiang Xuanying's?" Feeling a little disgusted, she curled her lips and raised her hand to throw it into the corner of the flower pot next to her. Unexpectedly, when Yao Shi saw it, she snatched it away and held it in her hand to look at it. Yo Yu was a little puzzled. Should we return it to her? Yao Shi's mind was in turmoil, but there was a gloom in her eyes. She only said, "It's just a small sachet. Why are you in such a hurry?" Yo Yu stopped talking. Yao Shi stared at the sachet for a long while, then casually put it into her sleeve and said, "It's not too late to return it to her when you come back. She wears it every day. Maybe it's an important item. If she loses it and panics, all the better." Yo Yu smiled and said, "That's good." After Jiang Suning left, they picked up the sachet and didn't bother to turn back to call her, and went straight to the imperial garden. A few days ago, the tiger hoof plum planted in the palace has bloomed. The Empress Dowager had gotten a little better from her cold, and to celebrate, the Empress invited all the concubines in the palace to come out to the imperial garden to admire the plum blossoms. Because of Xiao Shu's presence, the study companions in Yanjizai could also take advantage of the opportunity to go and have a look and join in the fun. Yao Shi and Yo Ye certainly didn't want to miss such an opportunity. The tiger hoof plums in the plum garden bloomed early, and the winter sweets also grew small buds. Walking in the garden was quite interesting. Yo Yu was born in the humble Qing Yuan Earl's mansion. She loved making friends, not to mention encountering such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and she was determined to curry favor with the concubines in the various palaces. But Yao Shi did not quite like it. She was born into a wealthy family and would not do such a thing. So, when the banquet was halfway through, she simply kept silent, left everyone else, and went out to the garden to admire the plum blossoms. The plum garden was quite large. Yao Shi said that she went to appreciate the plum blossoms, but as she looked at them, in this already chilly day, she couldn't help but think of Zhang Jia, whom she saw in the signing palace that day, and the reply letter of cancellation of the engagement that she saw in her father's study. She felt sad and full of hatred in her heart, and she walked deeper without realizing it. The end was somewhat desolate. A secluded pavilion, which was usually seldom visited, stood in the plum forest. The plum trees around it were planted in clusters, making it look lush. It just looked eerie and a bit scary. Yao Shi was not a very courageous person. As soon as she got here, she came to her senses and wanted to turn around and walk back. But she didn't expect that after she walked back a few steps, she heard footsteps and low conversations coming from the other end of the plum garden. If I hadn't noticed something amiss that day in Yanjizai, and if that little palace maid had been interrogated in court, what would you have done if she had carelessly revealed the truth? It was your niece who was confused and lost her normal state. Everything is easier said than done, especially in the palace. No one is a fool. I am so disappointed that you acted rashly without even knowing the strength of your opponent. Now that Jiang Suanin is fine, you have made such a strong enemy for yourself, and there is also Jiang Suehui coming in from outside. Although she is not the best in appearance, she can compete with you in academics, and she is very likely the owner of Jayer's embroidered handkerchief. You've been more than just foolish." Aunt is right. Empress Dowager Xiao walked in front, and Xiao Shu followed behind her. One of them had a face full of anger that she could hardly suppress, and was scolding harshly, while the other one had lost her usual calm and superior attitude, and was listening with her head lowered. There were no palace servants following either of them. Obviously, it is not appropriate for the palace servants to follow and hear such words. The footsteps were getting closer. Yao Shi had always had a good relationship with Xiao Shu, and they were very close. Even if she couldn't recognize Empress Dowager Xiao's voice, she could still distinguish Xiao Shu's voice. When she first heard what the two were talking about, she felt cold sweat breaking out on her head, and her heart beating wildly in her chest. She would never dare to show up at the moment. Seeing that there was a cluster of plum trees nearby with intertwined branches that could hide a person, she held her breath and quickly hid behind them, not daring to breathe. Empress Dowager Xiao continued walking forward, passing by the cluster of plum trees, and said, "Although you are one of the rare clever ones in the Xiao family, you are still young and have experienced too little. Your thinking isn't thorough enough, and you haven't prepared enough contingency plans. That day, you almost fell into a passive position in the palace, and you acted privately without even telling me. Do you think I couldn't see what you were trying to do?" Xiao Shu said, "Ah Shu has failed your teachings, aunt." Empress Dowager Xiao sighed. The emperor experienced the Prince of Pingnan's rebellion firsthand, and since then, he has become suspicious. He isn't even close to me, his biological mother. When choosing the empress, he picked someone from a minor family, not even selecting a single Xiao family member for the position of consort. He's wary of us. Jer, on the other hand, is gentle and kind, and he's closer to me. I know you have great ambitions, and looking at the capital, no noble daughter is more suited to be empress than you." Yao Shi, hiding behind the tree, didn't dare move for the time being. Although she told herself that she shouldn't listen if she wanted to live, her ears couldn't be sealed. The words kept coming, making her more and more terrified. The incident at Yanzhizai that day turned out to be Xiao Shu's frame-up for Jiang Ning. It was all for Prince of Lingji, Shenjie, and for the purpose of becoming the future empress. Then Xiao Shu said, "Aunt means." Empress Dowager Xiao said coldly, "As long as the emperor is still alive, if he wants to make Jair the crown prince, he will not tolerate the daughter of the Xiao family becoming the princess of Lingji. You have to keep your composure." Xiao Shu said, "Are we just going to watch someone else take the throne?" At this time, the footsteps of the two people were already a little distant, and their voices were also a little distant. Yao Shi swallowed her saliva, not daring to stay any longer, and quietly walked around the plum bush and was about to leave. But who would have thought that it was easy to make mistakes when you were panicking? When she bent over in a hurry, she accidentally bumped into a plum branch. The plum blossoms trembled immediately, and a sound of branches colliding was heard. "Who's there?" Empress Dowager Xiao turned around and could only see the plum branch moving in the distance, so she subconsciously shouted. Yao Shi immediately realized that her whereabouts had been revealed, and she ran away in panic. But the fear reached its extreme, and evil thoughts also surged up. There was a ruthless look in her eyes, and with a sudden thought, she reached into her sleeve, touched the sachet she had just picked up, and threw it directly to the ground. Then she quickly walked out of the plum garden, walked around somewhere else, and then returned to the plum blossom viewing banquet. There were a bunch of concubines in the palace admiring the plum blossoms, and there was also the Empress Dowager Zhao, so Jiang Ning didn't want to join in the fun. In Lorche Pavilion, Fang Miao was pulled by Zhou Baowing to sit there and play chess. She walked over and sat beside them, peeling the peanuts brought to her by the palace servants while watching the two ladies compete on the chessboard. It was not until dark that those who went out to appreciate the plum blossoms came back. Seeing people playing chess in Lorche Pavilion, everyone came over to see how much Zhou Baoying would win against Fang Miao in this game. Xiao Shu was also among them. Seeing that Jiang Suanin had already peeled a pile of peanut shells, Xiao Shu smiled faintly. Her eyes flashed slightly, and she raised her hand and handed a sachet to her, saying, "I just picked up something outside. It looks familiar. Is it from second Miss Jiang?" Jiang Suaning was startled and looked up. The sachet hanging between Xiao Shu's fingers was the one that Yao Fanyin had embroidered for her using the silk given by the silk farmers when she made her first business deal. The dark blue peony on it was very unique and beautiful. She lowered my eyes to look at her waist again, and found that it was empty without her noticing. She raised her eyebrows slightly and took the sachet from Xiaoshu's hand. She didn't thank her profusely, but was still a little cold. She said calmly, "It's mine. I don't know when it fell down. Thank you for your help." The edge of the sachet was hooked by something, and it was a little hairy. Jiang Xuning felt a little distressed when she saw it. She stroked it gently before frowning and hanging it back around her waist. Xiaoshu quietly looked at her expression and observed her behavior, and easily sensed the coldness that showed she was unwilling to talk to her, but other than that, she was actually very calm. Youyu was a little confused watching from behind. However, when Yao Shi saw this scene, her heart was beating like a drum and she almost lost her balance. Thank you for listening to this chapter. For advance releases of upcoming chapters, you can join me on Patreon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chapters. And kindly support this channel on Ko-fi. The link is in the description below.